Steve Rogers stepped into the briefing room, the star-spangled shield across his back gleaming in the pale light. The world saw him as Captain America, courageous leader, beacon of integrity, hero. In the faces of the Avengers assembled before him, Tony, Natasha, Sam, he saw trust, faith, and a hope built on his every word. Yet beneath the unwavering blue gaze and the measured cadence of his voice, secrets churned like a storm. Hydra's secrets, his secrets. It had not always been this way. Once there had been clarity. In the dark days of war, Steve believed in right and wrong, in a world that separated enemies from allies. But after the world had changed, the lines blurred. And Hydra, always lurking, ever patient, had found him in the fog of memory and purpose. "Rogers, you got something for us?" Tony Stark's tone cut through the silence, light and gruff in equal measure. Steve nodded, his hand closing tight over the folder in his grip. Intelligence reports. Fabrications laced with truth. Hydra's brilliance was in its subtleties. He spoke with purpose, laying out strategies, mission details, threats, every word chosen, each omission calculated. Natasha Romanoff, ever perceptive, watched him with a flicker of suspicion. Did she sense it? The flaw in the shield? Steve's heart raced beneath the uniform, every thump a silent chant. Hail Hydra. Days blurred into nights. He fought alongside heroes in the streets of New York, shoulder to shoulder with Sam Wilson as they blocked an alien incursion. He took orders from Nick Fury with earnest nods. Every victory, every act of heroism, the world credited to him, the unyielding sentinel. But in the shadows, he passed coded messages to Hydra contacts. Strategic locations, security protocols, whispered at midnight under the roar of helicopters. Each deed weighed against the soldier's duty. Hydra had carved into him long before the world called him a hero. The paradox gnawed at his conscience. Did this duality serve a greater good, or was he the greatest villain of all? Tonight, the choice sharpened to a point. A flash drive sat heavy in his pocket, the culmination of years of covert work. It held access codes to the helicarriers, everything Hydra needed to cement domination. The final play was in motion. He stood above the city, studying the streets below, feeling a dread no victory could shake. Back in Avengers Tower, Tony worked late, screens flickering in the dark. Steve watched from the doorway, his footsteps silent as guilt. Can't sleep, Cap? Tony didn't turn, waging war on insomnia? Steve glanced at his own reflection in the polished glass icon. Traitor, leader, two truths both crushing. You ever wonder if we're doing more harm than good? Steve's voice was quiet. Tony looked up then, surprise flickering behind the sarcasm. Only every other day, why do you ask? Steve hesitated. He wanted, desperately, to confess, to tear open the infection festering at the heart of everything they'd built. But he knew he couldn't. Hydra's reach was deeper than trust, older than love. Before Tony could press, Steve excused himself and slipped into the cold night. Down alleys lit by neon, he moved as a ghost. At the rendezvous, Hydra waited, a man in a dark coat, face half shadow. Steve handed over the drive without a word, his grip lingering a heartbeat too long. Hail Hydra, the contact said. If Steve hesitated, no one saw. But even the most cautious planned phrase. The next day, Natasha hacked a secure channel, her eyes widening as lines of Hydra code scrawled across the screen. Steve watched her from the doorway, paralyzed as realization crashed over her features. She confronted him alone, her voice stripped of pretense. What are you hiding, Steve? He wanted to run, to lie. But in Natasha's steely gaze, he saw the sum of all Hydra had taken. He lowered his head. I've made choices, terrible choices, for a cause, for a loyalty that... His voice broke. Natasha, I'm sorry. She didn't flinch. You're Hydra. He nodded. She raised her weapon. Why? Steve searched for an answer. Because the world isn't as simple as we wanted it to be. Because somewhere along the way, certainty turned to fear. Alarms blared. The Avengers converged, betrayal painted across their faces. Tony, fury, and hurt intermingled. Sam, disbelief, Banner, grief. Steve stood alone, shield suddenly heavier than a mountain. The confrontation was swift and brutal, words, blows, accusations like wounds. Steve fought not to win but to flee, unable to bear the collapse of everything he'd been. He vanished into the night, hunted by those who once called him brother, haunted by the weight of both duty and treason. The world learned the truth in horrified gasps. A symbol had been shattered. A new age was born, not of hope, but of suspicion. Trust, once Captain America's legacy, was weaponized and broken. And somewhere, in the ruins of certainty, Steve Rogers walked into darkness. Torn between names, hero, villain, Hydra, Avenger, unsure if redemption was possible, but compelled to seek it. The star on his chest remained, battered and uncertain, a reminder that even gods can fall, and that history is written not by legends, but by the choices made in secret.